welcome to our 16th season here on Literary Gladiators.
Yay, Sweet 16!
The show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Hi, I'm Renny.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Josh. And it's great to have some heavyweight participants here.
I lost weight.
I gained weight.
It's okay. You look fine.
Thank you.
I'm doing my best to stay fit. And Charlie, we're about 16 seasons. We've been on all 16 seasons.
How did we do it? I mean, have we captured any accidents on film yet? I'm kidding. No, that's
it's
amazing.
It's a good thing we didn't capture the time you fell backward from your chair and hit your head.
Well, fell off that was anyway. Yeah, it's an honor to be here, Josh. Great family friend, and I mean that wholeheartedly.
I do my best. And Larry's back for a 14th season.
Hello. Yes.
And
Good to be back.
Renny is back for...
When did I start with The Wasteland?
Yes, back in season 8.
Yes.
You've been on for 6 seasons overall.
Okay.
So, and the work that we're going to be going over is a work that you chose, and
Yes.
that is Kubla by Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
Mm-hmm.
We know him most for The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but I read the work to prepare in this collection published by Dover Thrift Editions of English Romantic Poetry. And you have a discussion starter, Renny?
Oh, not exactly, but I'll say something. Why is Coleridge important to romantic literature?
I mean, the interesting thing that I came across is that he was an instructor, and he taught Byron, Shelley, and Keats. And all of them were known opium addicts.
I remember learning that in one of the classes we had. I think it was British Romanticism or Romanticism, and that's we learned. The opium was...
It was laudanum.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy it over the counter, just like aspirin.
Yes.
It's like 80% opium and 20% alcohol. And Shelley used to say he never went a day without it. So I don't know whether that shows up in his poetry or not. But Coleridge said this was an opium dream.
Yes.
However, I don't think you can do an opium dream with internal and external rhyme and rhythm. So I'm going to read just the first stanza. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alph, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man down to the sunburned sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground with set walls and towers were girdled round, and here were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and there were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. I don't think that comes from a drug agreement, and I don't think he wrote it all at once either. I think he probably wrote it over a amount of time. He always said it's not finished. He never finished it. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I love the poem for the wildness in it.
I think that the first stanza, number one, I think it was, no matter what it means, I think it was beautifully written.
Yes, it is.
It's very, that's kind of like what, like if I'm going outside in nature, we'll say I'm visiting Batstow Village, and I find a place to read by the stream, and I just want to immerse myself in beautiful imagery that poetry has to offer. Maybe with Herb Alpert music in the background.
Has kind of a lot of Poe in it. It's shorter lines, but Poe liked a long line with internal and external rhyme. And this is really based on sound. A lot of Poe is on sound, and this poem is really full of sound.
But perhaps, with regard to what you had to say about the structure, perhaps it may have, it could have started out as opium induction, and then he goes back when he's a bit more sober.
That's what I was thinking.
And irons it out.
Yes. Well, after all, supposedly Frankenstein also comes from an opium party. And but the only one that really wrote the book they were going to write was Mary Shelley.
I was also going to say, too, with nature, just like any other surrounding, you have, let me start by saying with nature, you don't have any artificial sounds like construction workers and traffic. In nature, you have birds singing, you have water flowing,
Running,
you have all of those other, maybe the rustling of the leaves, and you
Maybe
have
a woodpecker.
yes, a woodpecker, and maybe the occasional get off my. No, I'm just kidding. But again, that also may have been an element, and that may also add to the bliss because. Again, this is before cell phones. This was before humongous. Well, we had big cities,
Yeah, it's a
but
time
still,
and place thing.
definitely.
But I mean, the references that are made. Zandu was the summer capital of the Yuan dynasty that was ruled by Kubla Khan.
In
Kubla-
Mongolia, yes.
Yes, in Mongolia. Yeah, he was the grandson of Genghis Khan. And if you look up Kubla Khan, the poem itself gets pretty quick recognition, which is very interesting because Kubla Khan was a figure in history. And then they refer to the Alf, which is as in the Alpheus River on the Peloponnese.
Also, another thing I wanted to add too, going back to that nature. What time of year do we know this was written? Was it spring, summer, fall, or winter? Approximately, because again, you have different types. In the rain, you have rain in the summer mostly. Spring, in winter, you have snow. So there's different elements of nature as well, different ways of life. So that also, and coming off that opium, he may have. So I'm going.
I would imagine
I'm going off
because of the references to greenery,
Yeah.
that
Spring.
it would be
Probably
spring. However, this is
I don't know.
Mongolia.
Well,
And-
actually,
Sure.
yes, the Romantics were very concerned about nature.
Mhm.
They loved
Yes.
things like thunderstorms.
I hate
and
thunder
things
as a
like
drummer.
waterfalls. And they really did like ruins, things that were distant, things that were exotic. And of course, by that time, China or Mongolia would be very exotic to them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I find that the rhythm of the poem, the meter, is very much like running water. I think
Yeah,
it adds to
yes.
the whole river motif that
Yes.
runs throughout.
Springtime, rivers, ice is melting. Yeah,
It would be a
I
great
could see
poem
that.
to read at the stream of Batstow Village then. But, yeah, I just think that, because a lot of people debate what the poem means. I didn't really get a great sense of who Kubla Khan was. I do know that it was probably somewhat of a response that Coleridge had to the research that he was doing on history in that area that took place between 200 and 300.
Was he an emperor, a king? Or
Yeah,
Kubla
he's
Khan
somebody
was
with
Duke
or something?
authority.
Yes.
definitely.
An emperor.
Was an emperor.
But
yes.
Coleridge was a poet.
Mhm.
But, yeah, it was interesting.
One sits on a throne, one sits under a tree.
Yeah, he spent some time in what they called at the time a commune, and he was supposed to to marry and come to the United States and be in something called a commune, but he had a breakdown, and that might have been a drug breakdown. Nobody knows, and then he never wrote anything afterwards.
Mm.
So he's not like Wordsworth, who wrote all of his
Yes.
life.
Mm.
But I want to mention him because it's Wordsworth and Coleridge that write lyrical ballads, 1798, and that is the beginning of British Romanticism.
Oh.
This was one of his last poems, but it was not his last.
He after a while he was not writing, and he didn't marry, and he didn't come to the United States.
Mm.
But he was very influential as a romantic writer. And yes, Keats, Shelley, and Byron come after he and Coleridge. He and Wordsworth, but Wordsworth writes forever. Coleridge eventually gives it up.
And the three younger ones die very early.
Yes, they all die young.
And then Blake was also somebody that was very...
He's pre-romantic, but yes,
Yeah.
he has a lot of romantic elements.
Yes, and they classify him as a romantic poet.
Also,
He and Burns.
and also with opium too, like any other drug, we all know. I'm probably Captain Obvious here. It affects the mind, but doesn't it also, like any other drug or vice, doesn't that also shorten your lifespan a little bit? I mean, some of the greatest. I'm a musician, speaking from that point of view. A lot of musicians who. Mozart, he was a phenomenal. He should be in every canon.
A lot of
Yes.
things.
But still,
I mean, a lot of even legal substances like alcohol and
yeah.
tobacco.
We all have a crutch. I have cookies, for example, and Snapple. But, at least I know I'm I admit it. That's 50%. But you know, that opium, from what I understand, can be a very strong mind altering substance. And again, Captain Obvious. So, have I tried it? No, but
Well, I mean, and then it has in there, this poem actually has that warning in there about beware.
Beware, beware.
Yeah. About tasting paradise.
That's what I wanted to. That's what I had a question about, because did it say drink the milk of paradise or the malt of paradise? I don't remember.
It's like honey, milk.
Well, milk and honey is a promised land, so.
I do get the
Beware,
sense.
beware his flashing eyes, his floating hair, wave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew hath fed, and drunk the milk of paradise.
Like it was milk of paradise.
I mean, it is probably interesting that the world is a beautiful place, and
It's a pleasure area. It's
yeah,
like
it's not
Seaside in the 1800s.
Yeah, it's not, and it's not for
Before
yours.
Jersey Shore, thank
It's
God.
not for yours to
Yes.
suck the beauty out of it
Yes.
and take
Yeah.
advantage.
Yes.
Right, yeah, or to have perfection for very long. It's not going to last.
Yes.
It's
And what
impressive.
better figure than a major emperor?
Yes, who
Well known.
builds this great
Yes.
dome, and then it's brought to ruin by the river. That's the impression I get.
Nature takes over everything too. Have you
In
noticed?
the
some-
end,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, when all is said and done. Yes.
Nature takes over everything.
You could have the greatest empire just be washed away by a major storm of some sort.
And time as well. Nature
Yes.
and time.
I think this is a little bit like Shelley's Later, but the Ozymandias. They're both about power of their time that didn't last. Looking
Ozymandias
back
had a
to
lot
this,
to do with hubris.
I don't know if it has anything to do with hubris in this poem. I certainly think Ozymandias might.
Yeah, Ozymandias for sure. This one, I think, more because Ozymandias was more of a fictionalized figure that embodied a hunger for power. Kubla Khan dealt with somebody who was more. He was an actual historical figure.
And he was far away.
Mm-hmm.
He would certainly be far away from Britain at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. I suppose so. Yeah, but I can see a little bit of. I guess I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about hubris. Excuse me. Thinking about
You're
hubris.
excused.
Arrogance.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe. I like to try to build something that is a paradise on earth is it's destined to fail eventually, or right away, or it's just not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the comparison between him and the use of opium, and I think that the warning that he's saying is that maybe that's why he's not going to be able to work forever, because of the fact that he's going to be drained by his laudanum addiction, and
It's going to overcome them.
yeah, and it's going to overcome him. Because it is a little bit meta, right? This work, because then he starts to talk about trying to write about the pleasure dome in song, right? He takes it as song about it, and how he can make it come to life in the imagination.
It is very imaginative. I think it is just something. It is something comes out of fiction, out of his brain. It isn't. He wasn't really interested in the emperor or anything else. That just put something far away that he could describe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has these words. They just roll on. That's what I like about
Yeah,
the
because
poem.
we don't really get, or at least
It's
I
not a
don't get a
plot.
historical sense
No, there's not
of
a
who
plot.
Kubla Khan was, or as if people are looking for a poem about Kubla Khan, this is not the poem.
And he said he never finished it, but it seems to me it's a whole of a piece.
It's all in the matter of the interpreter. I mean, it was panned by his contemporary, from the people during his time period. It was with time did it become more acclaimed.
I think that's also because of the words and the sounds and how it rolls on.
Mhm.
It is something young people like very much.
Mm-hmm.
It has no plot. It's just description. And I think that's all that he intended, was to evoke images for you. He wasn't trying to teach you a lesson. It wasn't a historical piece, although they liked history supposedly, but it was to enchant you. It's enchanting. That's what it is.
I would think that I agree. As long aside from the fact that it has to do with the beautiful this beautiful piece of earth and not being able to and not sucking the beauty out of the earth. I think that aside from that, I think it should just be taken for its face value, and it is meant to enchant and enjoy.
Yes.
I also wonder too, as we mentioned this earlier too, when he wrote this, I wonder it was like during an episode. I don't want to say episode, but when he took the opium, and then he just wrote down anything that came to his mind, sobered up, shall we say, and then said, no, I'm going to take that out. I'm going to add this, embellish on that. So again, we can only just pick up the pieces from where we are. But that's.
It has to be a worked on piece. You wouldn't have
Yes.
the rhythm and the rhyme and
Yeah.
the length of lines and so forth if he hadn't really worked on it.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think that when he claimed it just became a vision that he could write down was
Yeah.
true either.
Because if it was, then you have a really gosh darn good gift.
Ultimately, this was one of his three major pieces. You have The Rime of the Ancient Mariner
Yes.
is his biggest piece. There's this, and then there's Christabel, or Christabel.
Yeah, which nobody pays much attention to anymore at all.
That is
And
right.
even young people, when they come into college, they haven't heard of him and they haven't heard of Rhyme either.
That one was a long one too.
Yes,
I mean,
it is
in
a
this
very
one,
long poem.
it's abridged in the collection.
But from that, there is the huge albatross, the gilt hung around your neck that we still use as an illusion. So I'm surprised.
That's Rime of the
it's
Ancient
not
Mariner
used. Yes, that's from the Ancient
with the
Mariner.
albatross.
Yes.
But
I made a reference like that at work. I said, I feel like I have an albatross around my neck. I was just joking around about something. We ran out of cookies, okay? I'm sorry.
I argued I argued
No
the
one knew what I
albatross
was
was a
saying.
Christ figure,
Yes.
and an English instructor got pretty upset about it.
Well, it's...
He probably is something of a Christ figure. He
That's-
has to suffer and come through his suffering.
Or a way of making reparations
He has,
for...
he has to. Yes,
what
he
was
has to
done.
be redeemed.
Hmm.
Yes.
I mean, primarily the albatross itself, because it was given comfort, and because of such, he had the person felt that the albatross needed to go. But then he wore the albatross the way that one would wear a cross.
As a symbol of saying, I'm sorry, or a way of saying,
It was his guilt.
yeah.
Yes.
And penance is way back then. I mean, I'm not going to go into any of that right now, but in the very early days, penance, when you did penance, It wasn't just a few prayers. You did penance. But anyway, I'm getting off that train.
You want to say something more?
Choo-choo!
I don't think I've read it.
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner?
Yeah.
It's
You should.
You
I
probably
that is
did.
that's to me Samuel Taylor Coleridge's magnum opus, as far as his poetry is
I
concerned.
thought the magnum
It would be-
opus was somewhere else. Just kidding.
because he also the work that he's known most for is the Biographia Literaria, which is his. It's often considered his greatest and most influential work because he wrote a lot of literary criticism,
Mm-hmm.
social
He
thought,
was a professor.
philosophy, theology,
May I see
and
that
prose.
book, please?
Interesting.
Yes.
Thank you. I won't eat it, I promise.
Okay. I hope not.
I'm definitely intrigued. I'd like to read it.
Yes, it's definitely worth
I
reading.
would like to borrow this. If it's
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But, was there anything else anybody wanted to say about Kubla Khan?
I liked it.
Well, I love it. That's why I suggested we cover it.
Yeah,
I had
very
thought
beautifully
about
written.
putting it on previous schedules, but never got around to when Final Cuts came
Thank
into
you.
play. I went elsewhere. But I'm glad that we did go. I'm glad we revisited Coleridge and, in turn, Kubla Khan.
Yeah, I think it does have something to say. Like I said, I think it's a little bit like the story of Icarus, flying too close to the sun, and not making it. I mean, I think that's what it's getting at. But definitely the strongest piece, like you said, is
The Mariner.
the is the
Oh, the
this-
biography.
the way it's written. It's
Yes.
the flow of it,
Mm-hmm.
the rhyme, the rhyming, and it's just like everything fits together so perfectly, all the words. So that's definitely the strength of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Any final thoughts?
I used to teach it, and actually students really enjoyed having it because it's relatively short, and it does not have a tremendous amount of detail that you're to memorize, and so they could deal with it without having to be too academic. And I think that's part of why the poem has lasted the way that it does.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's good for introductory classes? Introductory level?
Oh, it's good for any
Well, yeah.
any poetry.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm.
It's very evocative.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got the woman with calling out for the demon lover from the caverns. You know, I
Yes.
mean, it's just the darkness that makes you shudder. You think of something like that, and then that's along the path of the river. You know, so it's like it's all
Interesting
connected.
literary response that Coleridge had because of his opium-induced dream.
Yeah, indeed.
But if you are interested in checking out this and other romantic poets, this collection here includes the poetry of Coleridge as well as, and these are select, so it's not every poem, but it's a select, pretty healthy sampling. Blake, Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron, and Keats. And here it is. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel, and be sure to join us next time for another episode of The Dory Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
And keep eating.